Call the City Council workshop to order for September. And the purpose of these workshops, as everybody knows, is to discuss various issues. We won't make any decisions here, but it's just a work session for us. Was Margaret going to be on today?
She's here.
Oh, she is? I didn't see her on my list. She is?
I just got on.
Oh, okay, great. I thought I would, if it's all right, we'll let Margaret give us an update on what she sees about COVID in our community right now before we go on to the building department. So are you okay with doing that, Margaret?
Absolutely. Thank
Okay.
you. So I need to share my screen. Oops, I can't screen share.
Sorry about that, Margaret. Layla, you'll have to, I think, get her. There you go, Margaret. You're all
Okay.
set.
Thank you. All right, let me make this into a slideshow. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically there's not much new really this week, so I'll go through this fairly quickly. This is as of today in some cases, but I guess because of the long weekend, a lot of the data isn't as updated as it usually is by Wednesday. So here are the statewide numbers. The good news is you can see that maybe we've peaked. I'm not counting on that because we've just had the Labor Day weekend. And we've got kids going back to school. So it's good to see it leveling off and maybe starting to decrease, but I'm not betting any large amounts of money on that. This is our hospitalization trend, and you can see that it is also probably starting to decrease a little bit. This is only this is September 1st, so it's gone down a little bit, but today's the 8th already. The top line is total hospitalizations, the middle line is intensive care unit patients, and the bottom line is ventilator patients. So we're still way up there in terms of hospitalizations in the state. And in terms of our region 1 is where we are. And again, it's the blue line, and it's not as high as it was back in the winter, but it's still pretty high. In terms of bed availability in Region 1, since I think all of the tertiary care hospitals are in Region 1, we have a pretty low availability of hospital beds. Our ICU beds are 4.7% open, and non-ICU beds are only 4% open. And that, of course, means a lot to us in Tillman County, because anybody who's severely ill in Tillman County has to go into Portland. I don't know if any of you saw the interview. There's been an interview that's been shown on NBC a few times with the doctor at OHSU who's the head of the ECMO unit, which stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, and they're just not having enough. They have enough machines, but they don't have enough specially trained staff to take care of all of the patients who could benefit from that procedure, which is pretty much your last chance. Another kind of piece of information is the Tillman County vaccination percentages. This is of all people, so it includes kids who can't yet be vaccinated. In our zip code, the surrounding zip code to Manzanita, we're 58% vaccinated. In the Tillamook area, it's 54%. Interestingly, and not very understandably, the healthcare workers' vaccination rate in Tillman County is 72%. So yikes. This is the test positivity over time for the whole state, the percentage. So you can see it's still up above 10%. And this is for Tillman County. It looks like we've gone, our test percentage, which was really high last week and the week before, has gone down a little bit. Unfortunately, if you look at different places on the website, it gives you different numbers, and it looks like for this week, which is a short week, it's down in the 7% range, which would be fabulous. But again, I'm not sure that all of the data is in on that. And of course, that statistic also varies with what the requirements for testing are, because if you're only testing people with symptoms or who are close contacts of people with documented COVID, then you're going to have a higher percentage. So this piece of data says that the week from August 29th to the 4th, which is last week, 15% of our tests were positive. So that's the info. Any questions about any of that?
Well, one thing I've noticed like you probably do, Margaret, is I look at the numbers every day, and we got all these high numbers, and we go into a 3-day weekend and the state decides, oh, well, we won't report anything over the holiday. And it just kind of screws all the numbers up when you're looking at them.
Yeah, it really does. It's frustrating. And they're behind and stuff. So bottom line, honestly, is it's still quite bad, and we shouldn't be doing anything different. So this is my informed recommendation for what do we do now, and that is keep on doing what we're doing, because that's pretty much all we can do. I have to say, I love the reader board. I think it's really effective, and we went up to Clatsop County to Warrenton for shopping yesterday, and the mask utilization rate was pretty high. I mean, Costco requires it, but Fred Meyer even, it was very high masking percentage. But the last time I was at the Tillman Fred Meyer, it was not nearly as high, which is a discouraging thing.
Tillman Fred Meyer understands had an outbreak there at their store too. They've had
Yes.
there.
Yes.
So I think stay the course. That's a pretty good answer. I hope this is peaking a little bit. There's a slight sign that it might be, but I think we have to wait another week or two before our comfort level goes up with that. I mean, I don't know.
I agree. I think we do have to wait another little while. And remember that, in addition to the Labor Day visitors and stuff, and not just visitors, but people coming to visit, people who live here and all of that, we aren't going to see that for another week or two. And then the kids going back to school, same thing. Although I was actually mostly glad to see that the Neocani School District is deferring in-person school for a while. I think it was indeterminate. So if I had little kids at home, I'd probably be way unhappier, but still, those little kids are vulnerable. So,
yes.
Margaret, do you want
Go
to
ahead. Anybody have a question?
Well, just a couple of things for Margaret. Margaret, do you want to talk a little bit about the testing and vaccination process in Tillamook?
yes. Yeah, I can do that. The health department is doing walk-in, drive-in testing at the fairgrounds by the 4-H barn on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I think from 9 to 3. And then they were doing vaccines at a smaller building next to their regular clinic building up until last week, when they started doing, again, walk-in vaccines at the fairgrounds again. So there'll be 2 vaccinators instead of only 1. And the hours for that are going to be 9 to 3 as well. So it'll be a longer opportunity and 2 vaccinators. So if we have demand, and I heard from somebody who worked last week that it was fairly steady. I haven't worked yet. I'm going to work next Tuesday, but it was fairly steady in terms of people coming in. So that's good.
That is good. I had just one experience with a friend who was in Portland over the weekend and got appendicitis, which is pretty significant, and went into the hospital and got the last bed in the hospital, which really speaks to I mean, that's normally a very minor thing and he was up and out the next day, but he really lucked out to get a bed. And that's
Yeah.
what's so frightening about this.
I mean, yeah, and that's stuff that, actually can't wait.
I can't wait. That's right.
Yeah, and Tillamook Hospital has been doing urgent emergent surgeries right along, and I believe this week they've begun, yesterday, they've begun doing some elective surgery, and usually that isn't actually elective, it's just not an emergency. So so that's good, but they're and I didn't hear a presentation today from Tillamook County, but they're at least half of their patients have been COVID patients for the last couple weeks.
Wow.
So I'm not going anywhere
And
except for
we're glad.
Costco, except for Costco and Freddy's with an N95 mask.
Any other questions for Dr. Steele from anybody?
Dr. Steele, oh, go ahead, Hans.
Oh, mine is kind of self-serving, but I'll do it
Okay.
quick. Margaret, I heard that the third shot, the booster for people with autoimmune issues and medications, will be available starting September 20th. Do you know?
Yes, but I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know which vaccine either. There was initially, the initial promise a couple of weeks ago was high risk people. So those people, immunosuppressed folks with immunosuppression, and possibly also the older group would be able to get their third shot at the end of September. But now they're saying, well, maybe just Pfizer. And so if you are an immunocompromised person who got Moderna, I don't know. It might be knowable, but I don't happen to know that.
Thank you.
Steve?
Dr. Steele, my question's kind of, and Linda provided a sort of a segue to this, but I noticed in your presentation that the Region 1 is at 4 to 5% availability on beds. And the question I have is, typically, if a person is really sick or significant trauma, they can often get transported to the metro area, the Portland area, for supposedly a higher level of care. So is that taken into account relative to, how many patients are coming from around the state into?
Yeah, lots and lots. That's why those numbers are so high. It doesn't have anything to do with what the prevalence of illness or anything is in the Portland area. It's because they are a referral center, and that's why the utilization is so high.
So do they take into account a person living in Region 1, for example, that might have an appendicitis or might have a trauma issue? Do they keep a certain level of beds available to folks that know? I
don't know, but I don't think so. I don't see how they could.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard, but the state of Idaho, northern part of Idaho, is saying that they're going to what's called crisis standards of care, which means that you have different criteria for who you treat, and that's horrible in this country. It's just horrible.
Yeah, it's interesting because some folks come to live near the city center because the medical care is more available to them. In a situation like this, the patients could be coming from anywhere in the state, and to the point of where you can't get the care that you're hoping for. So
that's exactly right.
I think
that's why everybody needs to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Eek.
I think I heard on the county call earlier this week that they transported 4 people to Portland over the 3-day weekend for additional care. I think was the number I heard. So that's going on. Sounds like that's going on all the time.
Yeah, it is. It's going on all the time from everywhere.
Anybody else have a question for Margaret? Anybody from the audience or anything?
I have no hands raised, Mayor.
Okay, well, thank you for taking the time to Dr. Steele to come to us. I don't think I'm going to ask you to come on tonight at the city council meeting. Things are pretty much the same, but we appreciate your input, and we may call on you again if things get crazy.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Huh.
The next item is building department review from our Scott, our building official.
All right. Give me a minute. Let me figure out if I can share my screen.
We see your face.
Uh-oh. Hey, Josh, can you re-enable me?
I
Says-
think that
Yeah,
might
it
need to
says
be
it's
Nina.
disabled.
You should be good to go, Scott.
Nope, there we go.
If it was Nina, you wouldn't have had to ask, so.
Okay, there we go. Figured it out. So tonight we're going to go through pretty much the state of where we're at this year versus last year. The numbers I'm going to show are going to represent calendar years, not fiscal years. I think it's a better representation of where we are. So now it's doing weird things. How the heck do I get back? There we go. So an overview, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the number of permits issued this year, new single-family dwellings for permits that have been issued, the valuation of that work that's being done, revenue and expenses for the year, cost recovery, the number of inspections for the year. We're going to go over a little bit of planning because I've taken over planning. I think last month is when I took that over. And then kind of looking ahead, what I'm seeing now and what I project for next year, and even into the next 2 or 3 years. And then at the end, I'll open it for questions. If you have a specific question when I'm going through a slide, don't hesitate to interrupt me. I don't mind answering at that time if it's easier. So the beginning of last year kind of started out slow as far as number of homes being constructed. We really took off this year. And somehow I got to get rid of this out of my screen. Okay, that's better. So permits issued. That is, it includes your structural permit, plumbing, mechanical, and all your mechanical permits. It does not include the new house construction. That'll be on our next slide. So over the last 4 years, we've averaged 156 permits per year. As you can see this year in the first 7 months through the end of July, I've issued 127 building permits. And that's all inclusive. And with kind of the trends I'm seeing now, probably by the end of the year, we should be somewhere in the 190 permits for the year. And that's calendar year. So the next slide, this is what I get a lot of questions about throughout the day when I'm talking to people is, how many new homes are we building? Well, average over the last 4 years, you can see we've averaged 10 new homes. And this year, in the first 7 months alone, we've done 34 new homes. And 13 of those new homes are in the Highlands. I think most of you are familiar with the Highlands. And then 21 of those would be infill lots. That's your homes you see throughout neighborhoods where nobody knew there was a lot there to be built on. Well, lo and behold, people go in there and clear it, and next thing you know, a house is going up. So just with the communications I have with the different contractors throughout town, I project another 6 or 8 new home permits to be issued before the end of the year. And that could actually be higher. I'm being, I think, conservative on that. So then valuation is based on what does it cost to build this new house? And that includes your material. It does not include, the value of the land. It's what does it cost for your contractor to come in and actually build that structure. So it's only reflects the improvement value and not the actual sales price of the house. So over the previous 4 years, that average valuation has been $4.8 million. And as you can see this year, our valuation is through the roof. It's at 17.5 million. And I can attribute a large portion of that to the cost of lumber and materials just to build a new home. I've had guys tell me that the cost to build the same house from last year to this year has gone up about 3 to 4 times just in materials. So then the next question is, how are we covering the expense of the building department? Here's our revenue and expense breakdown over, since 2017. And over the past 4 years prior to this year, we averaged about $68,000 in revenue. And actually it cost almost $72,000 to run the department, that's salary and everything. And I kind of looking at talking to people and looking at different numbers and the phone calls and emails, really what I see that's been driving this is the ability for people to work remotely. A lot of people have moved to their second homes, and when they get here, the first thing they're saying is, I need to upgrade this, I need to improve this, I want to add on. And we see that in emails and phone calls with people in the community just reaching out saying, what do I have to do to do an addition on my house? So another part that I think has driven the revenue is the increase in building fees that we implemented last November. And with that and the implementation of e-permitting, we've actually been able to track the work being done throughout town a lot better than we previously were. Just the tracking ability alone has been a tremendous. So on the next slide here is our cost recovery. And I left up the revenue expenses, I didn't have a real slide to go with that, but it's good to kind of look at the numbers. So starting, I think it was May of 2020, May of 2020, Cynthia started the process of restructuring the building department. And the majority of that restructuring was completed in November when we implemented e-permitting. Had it not been for the fact that we were already in the process of restructuring, there's no way I could keep up with the amount of work I've got, and just in phone calls, questions, and permits, and everything involved, with building a new house or doing a remodel. There's just no way that could have happened. So let's see. During that process, I've been able to provide a more consistent and reliable level of customer service by streamlining the whole permitting process. I've been able to go in and take, I think it was 5 applications to build a new home, and I've condensed it down for building down to 1 application that covers everything, which has allowed me to better track and provide a better, quality control on everything we've done. So that kind of, I think I messed something up on that slide. I think that contractor outreach goes in my next slide, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Nope, that was that one. So along with streamlining it, I've been able to assist contractors with the permit process and educate them with, here's the process. What do you see that I need to do on my end to make it easier on your end? And educate them with, ordering their inspections online. Going online, I've shown them where to find the answers to a lot of their questions. And it's made their job easier and also taken quite a workload off the building department. So along with all those permits issued come inspections. Some inspections only have 1, others, like a new home, will average 15 to 20 inspections for each new home. And at the rate we're going, I'll probably be over 650 inspections for this calendar year alone. And that number, it does not include the short-term rental inspections that I do. And I'm guesstimating about 100 this year. Next year it'll be considerably more with the way we're changing from 5 year further re-inspections. The cost of service, we just weren't recovering. We had 23 applications, and out of that, we were only able to collect $2,860. And we determined, we can't sustain the level of service, especially with the numbers we were seeing with larger projects being brought to the table. We knew we didn't have the knowledge to answer it. So we were able to bring in Morgan CPS at the beginning of this year. And prior to that, we looked at our fees and council approved an increase in fees. And as you can see, we were able to bill out $12,500 for fees, and our actual expenses were $8,598 paid out to a third party, Morgan CPS. So we were able to at least recover the cost of that and cover the cost of staff time. How much time does it take staff to review for a resident? For meetings with Morgan CPS to go over, and we're in a good place, as far as planning goes. So looking ahead, remember that house on the second slide that was on the ground? Well, things are looking up. This is that same house after they fixed it. So looking ahead, I see continued growth pretty much at the same pace that we're at now. It may slow down in valuation and permit fees a bit due to, the cost of materials adjusting and being back to where they should be. We've got the Highlands right now, phase 1 and 2 is being developed. Phase 3 is going through the Planning Commission approval at this time. And they are currently up there working on the infrastructure. So hopefully in the next 2 months or so, we'll get phase 3 approved. I do know that the next 2 phases are in design right now, and those probably in the next 6 months will be brought before the Planning Commission for approval. And then I also see, continuation of construction on the infill lots, at least for the next year. So with that, if anybody has any questions, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, Scott, you mentioned one reason why you think we're getting more people down here is because of working remotely, and they figured out they can live at the beach and they don't have to be in Portland anymore. You think that's the biggest reason out there why we're seeing so much building going on? I get those same questions like you do all the time. Why is everybody building? But
yeah.
I think Scott's having a little internet trouble.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is that better? Okay. I moved a little bit to my left. I should be all right. So that is a driving factor. I've talked to and met a lot of people that have moved out here to their second homes just because of the ability to work from home. So I think that's a driving factor in a lot of it. Not necessarily new construction, but I definitely in the smaller, large, projects, the additions and remodels.
any questions?
Scott, I am curious about the new construction. I thought from your presentation that what you had said was the remote workers were primarily moving into their second homes and perhaps needing to make additions or adjustments. But the new construction is fascinating because it's happening at precisely the time when construction costs are really high. A little counterintuitive for there to be such a building boom when it costs so much and it's hard to get contractors and builders. So I'm just curious, do you have a sense of where these folks who are going to be joining our community, where are they coming from? Do you have a sense that they're going to be joining our community, or is it more of an investment situation? Or
what I'm seeing, especially in the Highlands and some of these larger projects, is these are a lot of baby boomers that are moving out here. So it's, the people that have moved in, you know, it might be probably half of them are actual full-time residents now.
In the in the infill construction, or you're talking about well, do you see a difference between the infill construction and the Highlands, for example?
I do. I'm seeing a lot of the infill lots are second homes.
All right.
And the Highlands seem to be, the people I've met so far, they seem to be retirement age and looking to move out here full time. Okay. I just have one more question, and it may not be something you can answer easily, at least, but there's a lot of, if you go on local social media, there's just a lot of discussion among community members about issues that you obviously touch, but I'm not sure how directly involved you are with either the Planning Commission or the comprehensive plan. But I think if for the benefit of the public that's watching or will watch tonight, can you give us a sense of how your office, your position interfaces with the Planning Commission or the comprehensive plan? There's a lot of controversy, a lot of discussion, a lot of interest, a lot of intrigue, and you're sort of in the middle of it. Even if you're not necessarily aware of it, you're certainly not responsible for the, whatever level of controversy may exist, but you're right there on the front line. And I think it would be helpful for folks to know how you fit into that puzzle. That's a really good question, Jerry. Are you ready to beat me there, Layla? I'm smack dab in the middle of it. So the comprehensive plan is a good plan. I mean, that's the direction the city would like to go and what they like to see for development. But what we have are zoning ordinance that we have to follow. It may not be in line 100% with the comp plan, and we have to go by the zoning ordinance. So until we update our comp plan and update the ordinances, we have to go by the zoning ordinance. I'm very involved with the Planning Commission, pre-application meetings, Morgan CPS, and a lot of the discussions about the development. So anytime we get a project, we go through the zoning ordinance item by item, and does it meet the zoning ordinance? We don't necessarily look at the comp plan and does it meet that. We have to go by the zoning ordinance. So when somebody proposes building a new house and they're going to take all the trees off their lot, that is allowed. But for every 3 trees they remove, they've got to replant a tree. And that's all part of the process. Yeah, I get the questions all the time too. It's just, I am working on having some information posted on the webpage that people can be directed to hopefully cut down on some of the questions we get and maybe answer people's questions better. Layla, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think you did a great job, Scott. I would just only clarify, I guess, a couple things. What Scott's also referring to is we've been working together too to establish sort of a flow chart or a diagram of how development decisions are made. And there's kind of 2 tracks. First is housing, so residential. And we're required by law to have clear and objective residential standards. And so that does not require Planning Commission. In fact, that goes straight to what we call to the permitting system. So Scott has a great deal of involvement in all of the single family homes that are developed here because they are following kind of clear and objective standards that are laid out in our zoning code. The applicant has to demonstrate how it meets that. Scott kind of confirms it, and then he works with them to issue a building permit. Things that go to Planning Commission, which is kind of track 2, or much larger scale projects, subdivisions, things of that nature, commercial projects, those go to the Planning Commission. And Scott is also involved in kind of fielding or sort of triaging those applications, working with our third-party planner who actually then goes in, reviews those applications against the requirements, and issues what they call it's a decision. So they go through and he does a findings and then presents that to Planning Commission. So the contract planner presents the findings, and the findings compare the applicant's application and land use application to the code and determines whether or not it meets all the conditions. And then the third party, our contract planner, drafts conditions of approval, which are then discussed by the planning commission and either approved or added to. And then that's how those decisions are made. So Scott's involved in the early stages of that, but ultimately planning commission decisions go through the planning commission or evaluated by our planner, our contract planner. And then ultimately a notice of decision is implemented after that. So that's kind of how the process works, which is, I think, what you were asking, Councillor Stegman. I do want to point out that, you know, Scott mentioned the zoning ordinance is the enabling ordinance of the comprehensive plan. And so state law requires consistency between those two documents. And our comp plan has been updated, but has not been fully redone in over 20 years. And so it's not uncommon in cities like that, where the comp plan is just sort of being, you know, amended and updated, that the zoning code also gets amended and updated. And you'll see, if you look at our zoning ordinance, it's been amended many, 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 many times. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that the zoning ordinance is the enabling ordinance for the comprehensive plan, but there is, and I believe there is, between the two, consistency, and there's a requirement by state law that those things remain consistent. I think what we've heard from some folks, and I've certainly heard rumbling since I've been here, is that perhaps a comprehensive plan is not exactly reflective of where we are. And that's a larger conversation that this council would need to have. But that's just, I just wanted to highlight that we are legally obligated to have a zoning ordinance that reflects our comp plan.
Okay. One more quick question, I promise. Just curious, Scott, the level of residential activity is so far out of whack with the level of commercial activity. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts or indications about what lies ahead. Do you expect any kind of uptick in commercial activity that would sort of make sense with the increased numbers in terms of residential and population?
I'm really not seeing a large uptick. I know the planning commission heard a proposal from the Little Apple last month, and I'm not sure if it's coming back this month or next month. But as far as a large commercial project at this time, no. Nothing that would provide, you know, like groceries or restaurants or things of that nature. Is that kind of the direction you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I'm not in your field. I just am assuming that in towns with building booms and population surges, that there's a correlated increase in business activity or commercial activity. We don't see that here quite. So it just adds to the curiosity about, you know, what kind of town we are, what kind of town we've been, what kind of town we're going to become. And I'm just trying to learn as I go.
Yeah, I just, from what I see and what I've seen, is we don't have a lot of commercial property in the city. And there's just not, I haven't had the phone calls or the inquiries about, you know, can I build a 10-story hotel here, you know, things of that nature, or can I build a Safeway or something larger to support the community?
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I have a couple questions for Scott as well, and in response to Jerry, at least it's been, and Hans probably want to say something too, but it's been my experience in development services that a commercial surge, if you will, and a residential surge often are not at the same time. That depending upon the economy and a lot of other factors, you may see an increase in commercial development and a lag, if you will, in the residential side of things. So it's interesting, but if you were to look back at larger communities that have a lot of development, you would find that it often happens at two different times. But my question is actually, Scott, more into the minutia, and I don't want to go too far there, but and when I had originally brought this question at our last council meeting about our building department and building inspection services, I was concerned about the workload that you folks are under the establishment of, and you and I have talked about this, so this is not a surprise to you, but the core staffing needs of the division, and I'm relying on Layla to figure all that out. But I guess I see 750 minimum number of inspections that you're conducting, plus I think you're still doing the plan review for single family residential. Plus you have telephone responses and a lot of things on your plate. And I know you're a superhero and all that, but development services in particular is driven by customer needs. And that customer need is often in plan review and in field inspection and in permitting, and all the different things that go into that process is driven by the need of the customer to get that service done quickly. Because time is money in that field. Long-winded question, but my question to you is, where are we at with that? How comfortable do you feel? And maybe this is for Layla as well. And have we taken this opportunity with all the activity we have going to establish some kind of a core level of staffing needs so that we know that we can bump up and bump down based upon the activity levels that we're seeing? So it's more in the actual delivery of service than some of the other questions you've been asked.
So one part I didn't cover that I should have mentioned, that if you look at 2021's numbers of roughly 330,000 in revenue, and I think we're at about just over 60,000 in expenses this year. July 1st, we were budgeted for a part-time permit tech. So she has been working with me since, I believe, March, April, part-time. And she's been able to help me answer a lot of questions. She's come up with some good PDF how-tos that we're going to post on the webpage here pretty quick. And she's been able to field a lot of the phone calls and emails, taking that off my plate. So that's one of the reasons I'm able to keep up with what I'm doing. I think right now I have an average turnaround of about a week and a half to 2 weeks on a new house once I get all documents submitted.
Which is a very good time,
which is good. What is the total turnaround from the time they first submit? I mean, in other words, the question would relate to how well do they know the process to be able to get a complete submittal to you from the initial application.
So most of the local builders, just from me reaching out to them, talking to them, walking them through the process, usually when they submit, they probably, if anything, they're missing maybe one thing. And it'll be a tree removal site plan or an infiltration system, something real basic. But for the most part, the local contractors I deal with on a regular basis are fairly good at getting it turned in. So if they submit everything to me and everything's complete, generally I'm able to get it out within about a week and a half from start to finish.
Which, by the way, for people listening is really good. That there's a lot of places in this world that would love to have a week and a half, and many of them are 4, 8, 12, 16 weeks to get a permit through the process. So, and I appreciate everything that you're doing, Scott, and God bless you, because that's a lot of inspections and a lot of work, and appreciate that.
Thanks, Steve.
I was going to make a couple of quick comments here. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the old antique mall down in Halem has been torn down, and they're going to put in, I believe, retail space on the bottom and a half a dozen housing units on top, which is I think it's great to see some new construction down in Halem. We can spread the wealth a little bit, but there's a commercial project that's going on right now. Another element of this is the fact that there is virtually no houses for sale in Manzanita. And if a house comes up for sale, it's sold the same day, pretty much. And that's not unique to us. It seems to be going on all over the country. And I don't know if there's an end in sight to that or not. And I was going to ask Hans, I mean, you work in that industry. Is there any end in sight for this? I mean, there is just a total scarcity of homes for sale, which in turn drive the building boom in many ways. So,
well, I hope that there's an end in sight. You'd think that working in real estate, we would love this, but it's a nightmare. It's a lot of offers written, very few making it. values that are hard to show comparable. It's hard to explain to somebody how you logically come up with the numbers that are starting to happen now. And it's almost, I would say, like chaos, especially compared to 3 years ago. I had a listing recently, a valuable piece of property, over $1 million, 15 offers.
Oh, wow.
A listing I had also almost at the same time for half the value, 10 offers. And Portland brokers, I think partly because they have similar inventory problems, we're seeing a lot of Portland real estate brokers come into this market, which I don't have a big problem with. It does rile a lot of the local brokers, but it's not uncommon now to have half of the offers presented be from brokers you've never heard of before that are coming from the Portland area. So that is driving the new home construction. 3 years ago, people loathed the idea of buying land and going through that whole process. And now they have the urgency enough of wanting a home here that that they're willing to buy land and go through this process. The builders are starting to pick up on that, and it's easier now to engage with a builder, but a good builder now is still going to make you wait a year or so before you break ground. Some of them 2. Yeah, I wish I knew where the end of it was. But going back to what Scott was saying, it's that the land is zoned a certain way. So just a word to those that want to shut this all down, which, you know, I'm okay with that, actually. Let's turn back the tide. You're going to need to down zone a lot of property and just tell people that their $250,000 lots are now pine tree preserves, because there are a lot of undeveloped lots in this town. Commercial too, even though we have a very small commercial core, there's a lot of undeveloped commercial land here. And so who knows what the end is, but I see people coming here from all over, California, Texas, Florida. And they're coming here for a different climate. They're coming here for easier access to water. They're tired of being burned out of the places that they live that are now constantly in wildfire. So we're going to have a challenging period of years ahead of us.
Hans, you mentioned, just so I'm clear, you mentioned not downsizing, but down
zoning.
Down zoning, thank you, a piece of property, but that does not bring with it, if you were actually to try to do something like that, don't you get into a takings?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want anybody to walk away from this thinking all we got to do is down zone property.
It's a world of hurt. The question is, can you through modification of the comprehensive plan and changing some of that zoning to address issues like very large footprint homes. There are some things that I think could be done to modify development going forward. But no, I don't see downzoning as being a realistic solution. I see it as being the only way to stop. But you'd stop that for a while and do a lot of litigation and then start up again. So I hope that there's potential over the future years to adapt our ordinances and have some control over what is inevitably coming.
Yeah, I would just offer down zoning, measure 56. Those are definitely delicate and conversations to have. And just to kind of, bring the point up again, I've mentioned this previously, but, the state through the passage of House Bill 2001 has effectively for larger cities, so cities over 25,000 or cities that are within larger metropolitan urban growth boundaries, are now required to allow on basically lots based on lot size, multifamily housing. And so that includes duplex, triplex, quads, cottage cluster housing as well. And so that's one way that the state has kind of forced the hand of bigger cities to start to address the housing crisis, is by modifying their zoning codes, which have been exclusively oriented towards, in many cases, large lot, large sited homes, into expanding what they call middle housing. And those are those options I described: attached townhomes, duplex, triplex, quads, and cottage clusters. Unfortunately, at least I think it's unfortunate that smaller cities weren't required to take that on. And so there's a lot to be learned. The city I was just working for in Milwaukee is starting the hearings process to adopt a really wonderful code. We started that work as soon as our comp plan was adopted. We did a full-on code audit, and the housing element was the first thing that we attacked. And we did that by looking not only at housing and expanding housing choice, but we looked at parking, and we also looked at trees, which were also goals in the comprehensive plan that had a lot of intersectionality with each other. So I think that we're all about to benefit a great deal from the model housing code that's come out from the state, and then what we're going to see in terms of its implementation. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
Oh, that's good. It's all good information. It's it's a great conversation. Anybody else have any input? Anybody from the participants in the audience have a question for us while we're on this topic?
Well, I have a kind of a quick, kind of not so global question. We've gone, since I've been on the council, we've gone through different ways of funding planning. For a while, we actually had somebody externally doing it, and then we shared with Cannon Beach. So I'm kind of curious, Scott, on how you're funded, and if it has anything to do with the system development charges and kind of what's happening.
No, the building is funded out of the fees collected for permits.
Okay.
So the fee increase that was approved and implemented November 23rd last year,
Okay.
that's what is funding building and driving the revenue.
And that's why the revenue is up then, based on.
That has a lot to do with it, because our fees in the past were so outdated in our fee structure that there was a lot of things we couldn't even charge for. And with the new fee structure, the state itemized, you can charge for this, 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 and this. And we were able to go in there and put a dollar amount for, a new hose bib, a kitchen sink, a full heat pump. So it's itemized and broke down a lot better, and we're able to actually collect fees for a lot more things.
Okay, that's excellent. And then just one other question on the Highlands. You talked about the different phases. Will those be in the city of Manzanita, or is there a part of that will actually be in the county?
The next two phases are in the city limits.
Okay.
So the phase 3 that they're working on right now, there's 23 new homes in that. Then there will be another phase at the top of phase 1 and 2, and then they're working on down in the driving range area. But my understanding is the next two after the one they're working on now will be in the city.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Well,
I do think that Linda brings up a really good point relative to the budget, and this will be something for Layla, and I hate to even mention the fact we'll have to talk about this in the budget adoption process, because it seems like we just finished. But I think I remembered, Scott, you suggesting numbers of like 315,000 was what you've generated thus far, and we still have what, 6 months or so left? No, less than that, 4 months of the year left. My thought is that we're generating a lot of money, but our expenses are nowhere near that number that you're generating, and yet the building permit fees have to be spent on building permit functions or building functions. So as a result, we could be in a couple of years with a fairly significant more money in that account than we have the likelihood of expending over a number of years. So I just think it's something we should be thinking about now. And that was my whole point about core staffing, because typically what you do is you staff to a certain level, and then if you see that level go up, you start adding the staff to respond to the increased workload, and then you ratchet back down when the workload has been decreased. So all of those things are going to have to be talked about at the budget process. Otherwise, we're going to go into 3 years down the road, we're going to have a significant surplus in the building fund and have to figure out how to deal with that. So.
Right.
Yeah,
And
and
so-
I'm already thinking about those things, Steve, Counselor Nuttall, but there's a couple things. As you mentioned, building funds can only be used to support building. And right now, half of Scott's FTE is being carried by the general fund. That's what y'all approved. His part-time permit tech is being carried by the building fund. So building funds half of Scott's salary and the full salary for the permit tech. So we're still operating fairly lean. I don't want folks to, I was a little worried when folks saw that 300 number compared to the 70,000-ish, that we were like, making a huge amount of cash. That's not actually the case. And so the intent of those fees and the reason why the state has those allocated specifically for building is to account for variation in the market, which is typical in any cycle. You'll have a down cycle. And so why I still think we need to continue to operate efficiently is for the reasons you've described in terms of handling that variation. But I think as we go into the next year's budget cycle, being mindful of how we're paying staff in terms of the time that they're spending on the activities associated with those different funds. We need to fund some element of Scott's job out of the general fund because he does a great deal of work for short-term rentals, and those are covered through the resources we get from the general fund. But I'm already trying to think through ways that we can use the building fund to support building fund related work and projects through this year and through upcoming budget cycle.
And the other point, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but at least some of those fees, and I'm thinking of plan review specifically, are driven by the straight structural building code that would suggest there's a percentage, a fee that's associated with the value of the project.
That's
and
correct.
So we're not necessarily setting those fees. That's driven by other authorities, including the state of Oregon. So.
Yeah,
I don't want people to go out there thinking, oh, you're overcharging, because that's not the case either.
No, we're not. And that's a great point. And that's exactly correct. And I will also add that to the slide that Scott showed in terms of the fees that we're collecting for planning fees help offset the cost that we pay to a third party. I don't think they actually adequately cover the cost that staff is spending on planning related activities. So we actually, Scott he said he's been doing this for a month. He's actually been doing it quite a lot longer. And so I want to acknowledge that a big part of what Scott and his team are doing is managing the planning program here as well and doing just an incredible job. And by putting those fees in place, we've been able to at least maintain a cost neutral with respect to planning fees. And those are not insignificant. In a budget like ours, 10 grand matters a lot. And so I just think it's a monumental effort and we're starting to see that reflected. But you're right, the valuation numbers, it's a percentage based on valuation. That money goes basically into a building kitty, and then we hang on to that as we get into leaner years to support staff as we need to through those times.
And I'd like to add to that, Steve, with e-permitting, with July 1st coming up in the new fiscal year starting, we're going to be able to have a better tracking of those numbers through the next fiscal year. So we'll be able to break it down and really look at, are we recovering our cost? Are we charging way too much? Are we charging enough to sustain if we have a 2-year lull? But you still have to keep the building department going. And if you don't have the funds in the building budget as a reserve, then it comes out of the general fund or you contract out to a third party or the county. So, I mean, I'm looking at those numbers and at a point, if I feel that we're way overcharging, we're going to reevaluate the fees and come up with something that makes more sense.
I don't think we've ever been accused in the building permit delivery system or the development services of overcharging our fees in comparison to everyone else. So I don't think we're in any danger there. But one final point I would make, Scott, is I'd love to hear when the city manager mentioned your team, if you would name your team.
I've got Marilyn Adams. She's my part-time permit tech. And most of you know her. She was working for Ashley when she was on maternity leave. And then I kind of poached her from that when she was done and started training her. And she worked part-time with Dan and part-time, up in Public Works, part-time in the building department. So she's been a tremendous help to me in helping me keep my head above water.
Well, one of the things I used to get is a lot of complaints about our building department, and I do not get those anymore. In fact, I have people stopping me. In fact, one person is on this call who said it was the easiest, most effective system that he'd experienced, and he really spoke highly of both the city and of our building department. So we're doing something right.
I can mirror that, Scott. I have clients, as you know, you get to talk to a lot of them, and the clients that have to talk to the city, they do find their answers. They do get guidance. And then I also have clients that have to work with the county. And that's a whole different story. Because the county, and I mean, I know they're overstaffed, and I'm not saying they aren't responsive, because I do get help from the county and I do get questions answered there, but it is a much different process. It's much slower. And we are fortunate to have this program here.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think this has been a great presentation, and we've spent about an hour on this, which is great. Now, I see we have you on the agenda tonight, Scott.
I'm going to make it quick.
Yeah, you got a 15-minute window tonight. So I think if you want to give your slides and answer a couple of questions, that'll probably be about it. But this has been one of the purposes of doing the workshop is to give us enough time to ask some in-depth questions. And I think that's what we've done today. So with that, I think we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. We'll see you tonight. Thanks again, Scott.
Right, thank you.
Great presentation.
The next item we have, Linda.
Yeah, I just have
emergency supplies update.
Yeah, I just have a kind of a quick presentation. So as we'll talk about tonight, September is Emergency Preparedness Month. And there's just a couple of reminders I'd like to make around preparedness. One of the most important things that we need to keep reminding our citizens is that it's really important that you take care of yourself, that we have resources that are local. We have lots of training that's local. And in an emergency, the person that you're going to depend on is yourself. The city will be as responsive as we can be, but we've got limited resources. The important thing is that as a community, we have lots of very good resources. We have a go bag store that's going to be this Saturday. We have Dogami maps that are present. So we've got a lot of resources to help you get prepared yourself. The city is working to support in any way that we can. And we've got a couple of really cool resources that we've just identified or have actually made more public. Several years ago, All Classical radio station came to the city of Manzanita, and they needed a place to transmit to the coast, and they needed some place to put a transmitter. And the city agreed that they could put a transmitter on the city of Manzanita property. But as a part of that, the city requested that we be able to we be able to communicate to our community during an emergency using their transmitter. So on the first and third Wednesday of every month, we do a trial that is where you will get your information during an emergency, community information during an emergency. We did a video of it, so I wanted you to see it. Lori Dillon, who is a local resident and lives near the transformer, You'll see her in action, and this is a test case, but if we have an emergency, this is what you'll hear. So Josh, if you could play the video.
Okay, hang on one second. All right. And I don't know. Can you see that? Can you see Lori there?
No,
How about now?
no.
Nope. All right, hang on. We tested this before the meeting and it worked. There we go. Let's do this. There we go. How's that?
There we go.
And play. Dang it. Hold on. I love how you test something and then it doesn't work when you want it to.
Good morning. This is a test of the emergency alert capabilities of KQMI FM radio 88.9 megahertz in North Tillman County. It is conducted with permission from All Possible Portland in Portland, Oregon. This is only a test. In the event of an actual emergency, you would be asked to stay tuned to this station for important messages from local safety agencies. You would also be asked to invite your friends and neighbors to tune in. Again, this has been a test of the emergency radio communication capabilities in North Tillman County using radio station KQMI FM. This completes the test. We return the station to regular programming. Thank you and have a good day.
Well, I'm sorry we couldn't see Lori on it.
Yeah, all right. I don't know. I'll figure it out for tonight's meeting. I thought we had it this morning, so.
That's
anyway.
okay. But anyway, it's a real luxury to have something local. The information that will be provided will either come from the city or the emergency operation at the fire district. So it will be accurate information for you, which is, I think, very exciting. The other thing we're working on is that the city is working on purchasing supplies or beginning the process to purchase supplies for the Underhill Plaza assembly area. Lee Hiltonbrand and Dan Weitzel are working on that, and we hope to bring a proposal back to the city of Manzanita City Council meeting in October to begin to finalize that process. And we are also working on funding options for a temporary emergency operations center, and we'll bring that back probably in November to talk about. So we really are making progress on emergency preparedness. And we really appreciate the support of this council and particularly the support of Layla. She's been a wonderful resource for us. So I think the progress has a lot to do with teamwork at the city. So I just wanted to pass that on and thank you very much.
Any questions for Linda? Okay. Let me just kind of go through the agenda for tonight real quick, tell you what we're going to be dealing with before we adjourn. As Linda said, this is Emergency Preparedness Month, and we have a proclamation to approve, and I will take the time to read the proclamation. Then I will give Scott, will make his slide presentation. I'll try to keep him to about 15 minutes. That's what we get it scheduled on the calendar. So it won't be as in-depth discussion as we've had this afternoon. And then we have David McCall, for the solid waste manager from Tillman County, joining us to give us an update on Manzanita transfer station and a couple of other issues on second reading on ordinances. City Hall update. We do have a resolution on here to change our meeting time to 6 o'clock. As you remember, we talked about that before. So if you want to move this up an hour so you can hit your Manzanita bedtime, then make sure you vote for that one. And one other thing, as you've probably heard, Dan Haig has ended his contract with us at the Visitor Center. He's going to be with us to the end of the month. Dan has run that as an independent contractor for the last 8 years, and he's taken a position with Tillamook, Oregon Coast. And we wish him the best of luck in his new endeavor. And I talked to Layla about this. We're going to add the Visitor Center to our workshop in October, so we can, the council, we can start discussions on how we want to run that Visitor Center going forward. Does the current format work, or should we be doing something different? And I'll acknowledge Dan's service to the city at the end of the meeting tonight before I adjourn. So, Layla, do you have anything else that we should cover here this afternoon, or?
No, it just, it's a shorter meeting today. We had an item that fell off kind of at the last minute that we'll have for you next month. So
Fine, it gives us a little extra time for our evening meal, and we'll see you tonight at 7 o'clock.
okay.
And we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Good.